What's going on, guys? JPS back for another video, and today we're going to be reacting to how I see the United States after living in Europe for 2 years. Now, a lot of Americans, especially right now, are considering moving outside the United States, whether it's to Canada, whether it's to Europe, whether it's to Asia, whether it's to Africa, whether it's to Australia. Listen, people are trying to just get out of this country. It doesn't matter where they're going. And I am one of them, guys. You know, I've been over to Europe the past couple of summers. I've certainly considered my options when it comes to emigrating, and we will just have to see how all of that plays out. But I do know that I have several paths to obtaining citizenship in multiple European countries. There's a lot of factors that come into play with that. But trust me, guys, I have been considering. When I say that, I'm not just saying it to like throw the idea out there and joke around about it. Like, this is something I could definitely see myself living in Europe in the future. Like, there's no doubt about that. So as I grow older, become more of an adult, I guess, more immersed in adult life in the United States, I feel like I'm able to analyze and understand and give more opinions and thoughts on these videos. Because listen, a few years ago, I'm just coming into university. I don't even really know what life is like in the United States, like adult life. So I feel like my perspective is only getting better when it comes to reacting to these videos like this. So yeah, with that being said, let's get right into this. Here we go.
Almost 2 years ago, I took one of the biggest risks of my entire life.
Oh, I wanna feel something. I just wanna breathe again. Dive into the deep.
I sold everything I owned, told my family and friends goodbye, and started a new chapter in Europe, Portugal to be exact.
Damn it.
This is how I see the US after living in Europe for almost 2 years. And let's just say it changed me, but not in the way I thought it would. I'm going to be brutally honest and not going to hold back. Keep in mind, these are only my opinions, and you can take it or leave it, simple as that. Ever since the first time I had visited Europe back in 2011, I knew that I wanted to move here at some point, gain some new perspective, and introduce a new culture into my life. And what better place to do it than Europe? Instead of 50 states, there's 50 different countries that speak completely different languages and all have diverse food and cultural backgrounds.
This is it's not a problem, but this is what happens when you visit Europe. You have an amazing ass time and you're like, okay, things are complicated now. I don't think you can't just go back to the United States and not consider moving to Europe. If you have the ability to move to Europe, like, you have to actually consider it. That's just how amazing it is just visiting Europe. Imagine if it makes you consider, like, that's what the impact it had on me. Same as this guy. He's living his best life. We can already see that. But it's just so true. Once you go over there, your eyes are open. It's like, oh my, this exists? Like, damn. You can look at as many photos, watch as many videos as you want until you actually step foot off of that plane. Your life is never the same. I went to Europe. I've never been the same. I'm telling you guys, it's changed my life.
So I'm going to start with the
And I
biggest
haven't even
difference
moved
that
there
I
or
found
anything.
between United States and Europe, and that is the work-life balance. Now, this is a big generalization because I know that there's countries in the European Union that work very hard and want everything to be perfect. Germany. But for the most part, it seems that one of the most important things to Europeans is their quality of life. There is this generalization that a lot of Europeans don't work as hard as Americans, and I don't think that's completely true. Many cafes and restaurants in Europe have the same owner from the start to finish. They never retire. They do the same thing with very exceptional quality until the day they die. And this isn't something that happens too often in the United States. This is one of the reasons that I think in Europe, the food quality generally tends to be a bit better, even the fast food. The European fast food tends to still have fresh ingredients if they...
Not just a bit better, significantly better. Not only in terms of health, but in terms of flavor and taste. I mean, are we looking at these dishes, bro? You're not going to find this in the United States. You're just not.
Aren't the franchises from America like McDonald's. You can't compete with a restaurant whose owner has been cooking the same dishes for 50 plus
Yikes.
years. And it's pretty obvious when I speak to friends and family back in the United States that they kind of have this rushed agenda where they're trying to get as much done as they can throughout the day. And this was me included when I lived in the United States and I was working 12-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week. But I was missing out on some of the most important things like stopping and really listening to my friends and family. And I think that this is one of the most important things to most Europeans. I think this idea in the United States of having these big achievements and never being forgotten is something that's really important. However, in Europe, they have the right to be forgotten. There is actually a law in Europe that is the right to be forgotten. Now, this is a foreign concept that I don't think Americans think about a lot.
What?
In Europe, if you've had an imperfect past, the European Union allows you to move past that. And this also means that in Europe, people have the right to have their personal data erased once the personal data is no longer necessary to the organization collecting it. While in the US, forcing removal of articles on the internet is impermissible under the First Amendment. Now, after living in Europe for almost 2 years, I have come to the conclusion that the United States is currently in a state of toxic extremism. It's not very common in Europe to hear people arguing about politics, blaming unrelated issues on opposing political.
It's literally only gotten worse. I can promise you that since he's made this video. I did not know that you have the right to be forgotten in the EU. What? That is insane. Yeah, definitely not the case over here, guys. People take their legacy so seriously. Like, bro, it doesn't matter how much money you got or what cars you got or what role you had in that company. You're still going to be forgotten. Your information can be there. No one's going to look at it. Nobody cares. Like, just enjoy your life. Be happy. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not saying people shouldn't strive to achieve and be the best version of themselves. That's not what they're doing, though. They're striving to look like they're the best version of themselves. It's all a show. It's all for the image, bro. It's all for the image. Look at me, I'm living my best. Like, no. Deep down, a lot of these people are very unhappy. They got the cars, they got the money, the house, but they're not content with life. You want to know why? Because they got to drive to the grocery store. Can't walk. You don't see any humans. It's terrible.
Unrelated issues on opposing political parties or specific politicians. It's just something you don't really hear that often. Now, that doesn't mean that Europeans aren't political. However, you don't see it tearing apart families based on the president or prime minister that they voted for. When I go to family gatherings in Portugal, rarely does politics ever come up. And this is something very polarizing and disappointing in the United States. I can't go anywhere in the United States without somebody blaming something on Biden or Trump, like they're responsible for everything that's gone wrong in the past 10 years or something. Now, sure, I have my political beliefs as well, but I usually keep them to myself and don't ruin everybody around them's energy and vibe. Now, in Europe, they have witnessed all of the extreme political swings, and they are living in a direct result of the aftermath, which is why they are a little bit more hesitant and seasoned when it comes to political matters. If you come from a place in the United States like Detroit or Flint, Michigan like I do, then safety is a night and day difference here in Europe. Especially Portugal, which has been ranked one of the top 10 safest countries in the world.
Damn.
After living in Europe for 2 years, I've been able to let my guard down and not be as paranoid. Especially when I'm walking around alleyways at night or going to see a movie or going to a festival, I don't have to worry about the place being shot up. It's very sad, but this is a true reality in the United States. And in the USA,
It's always on the back of your mind, guys. It's always on the back of your mind in the United States. That's why when I go to Europe, I just feel so freed, bro. Don't gotta worry. Don't have to have your head on a swivel. Most people here aren't gonna do you like that, but some people are. There are way too many crazy ass people in this country with guns. That's the big, like, so stupid.
wealthy people have moved to the suburbs in gated communities because they fear the inner city's rising crime rates. And I can't help but to think back in times when I lived in Los Angeles where I was robbed at gunpoint, or when I lived in Reno, Nevada and our family house was broken into multiple times. And sometimes it makes me apprehensive to come back to visit the United States. And if you've ever had a gun held to your chest, I'm sure you can sympathize with what I'm talking about. But after being in Europe for a couple years, there are few places that have violent crimes like the United States. Europe is certainly not a perfect place, and you do have crimes happening here. However, nowhere near the scale of the violent and gun crimes happening in the United States. A place where you can be attacked in the streets for your beliefs. And that concept to most Europeans is completely foreign. Now, I know that prejudice exists here in Europe. However, I have never heard an ethnic or racial slur ever yelled on the streets like I have in the United States. And that should say a lot. All right, now let's talk about the food. Unless you have the financial means to do so, you are likely paying 4 times for gourmet foods in the United States, where in Europe, these foods are just the normal.
This is the biggest fact about Europe, guys. Like regular, like when you look at the prices, regular food, it's like it came out of a 4 or 5-star restaurant. And then the problem is, at first you're shocked and then you just get used to it because everything is just so damn good. The quality is so good. Sometimes you don't even have to go on Google Maps or look at these restaurants' ratings because they're all just so good. I don't know how that's possible, but it's true. No matter what the restaurant is, like the quality is so good and the prices are cheap. Cheap, I mean, that's very subjective, but considering the quality, yeah. You gotta, in the United States, you gotta be careful where you eat at. You might end up on the toilet later, and or you might end up overpaying for some garbage.
In America, fresh, healthy food is usually sold at a premium where only the richer people can afford it. In my opinion, this is a crime against humanity. Here in Europe, they subsidize the agriculture so that it can still be sold at an affordable price. And more than half of the GMOs and chemicals available in United States foods are illegal in Europe. Typically in Europe, teenagers speak multiple different languages. They're well versed in fine arts and music. And they understand world geography. Generally just much more cultured than what I see typically in the United States. I mean, when I first came to Europe when I was 21-year-olds, I had 17-year-olds playing me Mozart and Bach and painting incredible paintings and speaking 4 different languages to me, and I realized that, wow, I am not cultured at all. And I think a big part of this is attributed to the education. All over Europe, schooling is free. And some of the best universities are even free. Students here can...
I'm sorry, every time I hear that, it's still a shock. Like, that's such a foreign idea to me. Education being free, higher education. Nothing's free, obviously, taxes, but I wish we had that same system over here. I would not mind paying my taxes for everyone. Because then also what people don't realize with that is then the society as a whole is brought up. Americans are always wondering why we have to deal with dumbasses on the daily. Guess what? Because not everyone can afford to educate themselves. And even those who can, the education system's not even that great because it's built for profit. So I think Americans just need to really be educated on taxes. Like the whole idea of free healthcare like puts so many people off. Free education scares so many people. Like the benefits for that are just, they outweigh the negatives so much. Like you uplifting the society as a whole, that's going to create so many benefits for you as well as an individual in that society. But people just cannot understand that, bro. And it's so frustrating. It's so tiring to deal with that.
Free. And some of the best universities are even free. Students here can focus on their passions, and if they don't like what they're gotten into, they can switch it without being in this massive mountain of debt like in the United States. Students in Europe can focus on their passions, And if they made the wrong decision and don't like the career path they're taking, they're not in mountains of debt like they are in the United States. They don't have this strong pressure to continue to pursue something they don't want to do. And I think this is really important. Some countries in Europe even allow you to go into a specific trade of choice to be able to follow your passion and not have to learn all of this useless knowledge that has nothing to do with your career path. I know many people, including myself, that are afraid to go to the doctor in the United States because of how much it's going to cost. And it's a complete opposite concept.
Literally have dealt with this recently, weighing out if the copay is even worth it. Ridiculous, guys. It really is ridiculous to have to worry about paying like $100 to visit for a basic checkup. Is it even worth it? I'm probably fine. Might as well not even go. You know how like it really affects people, like the cost of healthcare. And that's me speaking as someone with health insurance who has the copay. Imagine people who don't have health insurance, which is a lot of people in this country. Like they're not even going to consider going. So sad, bro. It's really so sad.
In the United States because of how much it's going to cost. And it's a complete opposite contrast here in Europe, where many of my friends go to the doctor regularly just to get a checkup because they can. And it seems to be encouraged by the doctors. In Europe, things like blood tests and exams are a fraction of the cost that they are in the United States. For instance, I went to the hospital and needed to have an x-ray done on my finger. And I went, no, how much is that gonna cost? And they said, €1. And I went, can you put my whole body into the x-ray machine then? Just kidding, I don't need any unnecessary radiation exposure. But I don't think that people should be in fear of going to the doctor, and this is the reality for a lot of people in the United States. Currently, I pay a premium healthcare insurance in Portugal for about €85 a month, and that includes just about everything. Whereas a not so good insurance in the United States that I was paying $500 for a month was never accepted anywhere and was a complete hassle to have. So the polarization is pretty crazy in terms of the healthcare here. Now, I will say that the public hospitals tend to get overrun here in Portugal sometimes. But because I have private healthcare insurance, I can use any of the private state-of-the-art hospitals located anywhere in Portugal. And I've been there a couple times and they're super nice and I've been really impressed by the facilities. Damn. Now, alcoholism certainly exists in Europe, that's for sure.
I did not expect this one.
The drinking culture in the United States is completely different than most of Europe, maybe more similar to Ireland or United Kingdom. A lot of European countries have a long history with wine and beer, and they've developed an art form on when and where and how much to drink. In comparison to the American binge culture, shots. This doesn't really exist in Europe for the most part. In fact, it's very rare
I
to
don't
see
know if I... Maybe.
people taking shots.
Let's hear them out before I...
And if they are, they're these little baby shots that are half of what they are in the United States. I feel like in the United States, it's encouraged to get wasted and get super drunk, and people brag about these experiences. But in Europe, you don't want to be that guy. Don't be that guy stumbling through the streets. They will think you are a complete idiot. Do yourself a favor and don't be that guy. But how I see the United States now is not all negative, and there are some things.
That is kind of facts, though. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of people in the United States that cannot control themselves when they get drunk, and they just drink too much, bro. Like no one wants to see someone who's gone beyond their limit. Like that's definitely a big thing in Europe. Can't be too drunk, and it's also just not a good idea. Like it's not healthy. It's not very fun. It's just stupid. Like that's something you do when you first start out drinking. But he is right. We do have kind of that extreme culture, not only when it comes to politics, alcohol definitely as well. The shots is big. But I also think in the United States, alcohol, like we just have so many different types of people in this country. So you can't quite group us all in with, with other things, it's easier to group us in. But alcohol, I feel like people have a lot of different ideas on how to go about that in this country. But I do see those extreme groups who just absolutely get wasted that you don't see happening in Europe. But at the same time, there are a lot of people in Europe who get absolutely plastered. Like when I left Berlin airport at like 10 a.m. and there was this group of like 11 guys just wankered out of their mind. Like one of their friends was in a wheelchair and they were like spinning him around, pushing him through the airport, like running around, yelling. I was like, yeah, I wonder where they're off on a flight to. Probably somewhere Eastern Europe. Like, who knows? So I agree to some degree. That's a difficult thing to group Europeans in with alcohol. But I think you guys are definitely more refined with how you go about consuming alcohol. Obviously, I mean, it's been there for ages. And who's got the best beer in the world? Germany? Not a question. Well, that's based off of my current experiences, of course. I know that Belgium has some amazing beers as well, but so far, guys, Germany has the best beer in the world, in my opinion. Wine as well, you know. France has the wine. Everywhere else has the wine as well. It's dirt cheap wherever you go. Wine is just amazing in Europe. So shout out to you guys with the alcohol. You guys know what you're doing. We know that.
Not all negative. And there are some things that I took for granted while growing up there. One of those things is the American dream. Now, a lot of people said that is dead, but I believe the spirit is still very alive and well. The concept of entrepreneurship is not as popular here in Europe as it is in the United States. The United States is a place where people have a dream and they can move that future forward. And I have to credit that optimism for the entrepreneur spirit that I have today. And I never realized how truly American this concept was. And I would not be where I'm at today without this hustler go-getter mentality. And I have to give massive credit to the United States for that. I think a lot of times in Europe, it is this foreign concept to have this grandiose dream where you can live in financial freedom and retire early. But I believe Americans have the spirit of working very, very, very hard to be able to retire and enjoy, a certain amount of your life. However, one of the biggest problems is that people don't end up retiring until 65 in the United States, and most of your life's over. So younger Americans now want to retire at 40 and 35 if they can, and more power to them if they can figure out how to do so. But after painting these generalizations with such a wide brush, it's important to mention that there are countercultures and micro-communities all over the United States that also criticize many of the things that I mentioned in this video. There's an America that I love and miss so much. But of course, there are truths to the stereotypes or else they wouldn't exist. But at the end of the day, honestly, I'm just trying to have an open, fun conversation. And that's one of the beautiful things about living in the free world. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Am I just trying to put everybody into a box, or is there so...
Honestly, I really like his conclusion at the end, guys. That's very true. Some of the stereotypes are true for a lot of people, but at the same time, there are a lot of Americans who do see through the BS. They know what they know our country is sometimes just backwards. Maybe more than sometimes. So I have faith in my generation, guys. And yeah, this is a great video. Shout out to Dave in Portugal. I hope he's living his best life. It looks like he is. It looks like he is. This makes me want to move to Europe even more. Every time I react to how I see the US after living in Europe, it makes it harder to live here. Honestly, it really does. So excited to get back to Europe in the near future. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hit that like button, hit subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.